Israel and Hamas agreed to a temporary ceasefire, opening a path to end 15 months of intense fighting in Gaza that has killed tens of thousands of Palestinians. This agreement, which the Israeli cabinet is yet to approve, is set to take effect on Sunday and see the phased release of 33 Israeli hostages as well as Palestinian prisoners, while Israel will also pull its troops from densely populated areas in Gaza. The US President, Joe Biden, took credit for the months-long negotiations, but analysts also pointed out to the incoming Trump administration's efforts to actually pressurize Israel on this deal. Israeli forces, however, are continuing with their attacks across the Gaza Strip, killing at least 30 Palestinians in the enclave since this agreement was announced. So the agreement is but a fragile reprieve lasting just 6 months, some analysts argue, and celebrations in Gaza were cautious as per multiple reports. Listen in to what the Prime Minister of Qatar had to say, followed by the outgoing US President's reaction and my colleague Sarah Coates' report from Tel Aviv.
دولة قطر وجمهورية مصر العربية والولايات المتحدة الأمريكية الإعلان عن نجاح جهود الوساطة المشتركة بوصول طرفي النزاع في قطاع غزة إلى اتفاق بشأن تبادل الأسرى والرهائن والعودة إلى الهدوء المستدام وصولا لوقف دائم لإطلاق النار بين الجانبين.
I'd also note this deal was developed and negotiated under my administration, but its terms will be implemented for the most part by the next administration. In these past few days, we've been speaking as one team. This has been time of real turmoil in the Middle East. But as I prepare to leave office, our friends are strong, our enemies are weak, and there's genuine opportunities for a new future.
Celebrations right around the region after this ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas was announced by Qatar's Prime Minister after 15 months of fighting and more than 46,000 people killed in the Gaza Strip. Now, this ceasefire deal is expected to go into effect on Sunday, with 3 hostages released that day, another 4 released 1 week later. Now, this first phase of the deal will see 33 hostages released in total in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners being held in Israeli jails. Now, it is during the second phase that there will be discussions on how to permanently end this war, and it is during the second phase that soldiers will be released, male soldiers and also men under the age of 50. So once again, it certainly is good news for the region after 15 months of fighting, but in saying that, there is a lot of careful optimism and anticipation given that previous ceasefires or attempts to get them over the line have fallen over, but certainly this is good news that we're hearing this evening. Sarah Coates for NDTV, Tel Aviv.
And for further clarity, we have with us Middle East expert James Bowden and Ray Locker joining us on the broadcast. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for making time for us on NDTV. James, I'd like to begin with you first. Would you call this ceasefire deal fragile reprieve? What do you think are the factors that will determine whether this ceasefire will hold beyond this proposed 6-week window?
Oh, it's absolutely fragile. And I think it was very appropriate to emphasize all throughout the reporting that, you know, this is the engagement, not the wedding. We have not gotten to the cabinet approval, and this could still be sunk in the cabinet tomorrow when they meet together. So again, as was expressed in the report, just very cautious optimism and thinking that it might go through, but it could still fall apart. And even in the run-up to the ceasefire, we have seen in other ceasefires that Israel has extensively bombed, especially in Lebanon, southern Lebanon and Beirut. And so if they do that same type of pattern in Gaza, it may undermine their efforts. It might actually break the ceasefire. So everything is just a very delicate process right now.
Ray, let's bring you in as well. Given the significant loss of life and destruction in Gaza, considering the emotional and psychological toll this war has taken, you believe Gaza is truly celebrating this ceasefire, or is the mood more cautious?
Well, I think they're cautious, but I think they're celebrating because it means, at least for temporarily, they'll get a respite from the constant bombing and attacks that they have brought upon themselves for the last 15 months.
But Joe Biden has taken credit for facilitating this ceasefire. But many reports also suggest, meanwhile, that the Trump administration may have played a key role in pressurizing Israel. Ray, how do you evaluate the diplomatic contributions from both the US administrations in this agreement?
Well, I think Biden's been working for a long time to get to this deal. But the thing that the Israelis knew and Hamas knew was that Trump wanted the Israelis to do whatever it took to get rid of Hamas. So Hamas is looking at this saying it's January 15th. We got 5 more days to deal with Biden. And then after that, we got to deal with Trump. We don't know what he's capable of doing. Meanwhile, Trump and his team were saying to the Israelis, we want this to stop. And we don't know how much how patient we'll be. We don't want this to go on. And I think both sides looked at the future and said, it's better to deal with this now than wait 5 days.
Right. And James, how would you view the broader implications of this agreement in the context of Israel's military and political goals in Gaza? Do you argue that this agreement is simply a tactical move, or is there a genuine shift in Israel's strategy?
I see this as a possible net loss for Netanyahu, and I think that it's going to be a very significant step. I do think that they will likely resume the war. We have not seen any announcement of them withdrawing the declaration of war that they issued at the beginning. And I think it's very possible that they will go back in after the term of the ceasefire and continue the war because they've not met all of their objectives. And so I do think that there's going to be a reinitiation. During the ceasefire, though, there may be a significant amount of political combat and fighting within Israel, and that might change the game. It's a very dynamic situation there.
But Ray, let's bring you in here. What would you say then are the major hurdles that remain for any potential long-term peace agreement as far as this is concerned?
Well, on the Hamas side, you got to look at whatever leadership they have left and what they want to do. Do they want to continue to push Israel and, continue to be a terrorist organization as they have been? And on the Israeli side, do the right-wingers in the Netanyahu government want to keep pushing for total eradication of Hamas and claiming land in Gaza? Some people want all of Gaza, and those people often hold the balance of power in the Israeli government. So long term, I'm not real optimistic we're going to see peace, upon the land there for any time in the foreseeable future.
Right. James,
Definitely.
as we wrap, what do you think makes this agreement different? Could we see this as a sign of potential diplomatic breakthrough? Or would you assert that this is a momentary break in a much longer cycle of violence?
I think that this is a break in a much longer cycle of violence. My view of the Middle East and my experience with it over 14 years of research and study says that even if this gives us a prolonged pause, we are likely to see further issues grow out of this conflict that weren't resolved and will have to be readdressed through another conflict or two. So unfortunately, my optimism is very low at this point. And I do think that if we're not going to see something immediate, maybe a year from now, maybe 2 years, but there will be a renewal of violence.
Well, let's see what the Israel cabinet does today. Thank you so much, gentlemen, as always, for joining us on NDTV.